Hello all, Old Geek here, and today I'm going to be talking about Middle-earth role-playing again. And following on from last week's live stream, I'll be focusing on the topic of experience points. In recent years, with people shifting to a more story game approach to RPGs, a lot of groups have thrown the traditional idea of experience points out and are using variants of milestone, either milestone XP or milestone leveling. There is a difference between the two. These fit a game style in which there is a defined story, commonly with specific episodes in, where the group are keen to keep the player characters advancing at the same rate. Now go back several decades and most games were not like that. Of course some were, but and some groups adapted their games to fit a more narrative style, but in general older game systems worried less about supporting character balance and huge overarching stories. The focus of the games instead tended to be on exploration, ingenuity and getting loot, and thus the XP systems in those games tended to promote certain play styles. Something I often see is that people who play more modern games throw away XP because they can't be bothered with the maths or bookkeeping involved, and I find this a little weird, as it's really not difficult. XP in 5th edition D&D is much simpler than in either version of AD&D, for example. But this video is about MERP, and MERP took XP to a whole new level, if you excuse the pun. Now the point of this video is not to put anybody off trying MERP, as I will at the end of the video give an example of how I would simplify its XP system to make it less of a chore while still retaining the style of reward system that the game encourages. So here goes. Right, I'm going to start by reading the introduction to the experience and advancing levels section of the rulebook. This is the version that was reprinted in 1986. Each character in a fantasy role-playing game has a level that represents how capable he is. Characters become more powerful and skilled by advancing levels as they gain experience. Experience is represented in play by experience points, which the Games Master awards to characters for certain activities and achievements. Normally, a character starts play as a first level character, and his level increases as he acquires experience points from his adventures. A character's level does not necessarily increase each time he gains experience points. It increases when his experience points total reaches certain points, as explained below. Nothing revolutionary yet. This all sounds very normal, same as with AD&D from the era and any version of D&D ever since. So the next chapter is entitled Experience Points. Learning how to award experience points is one of the most difficult tasks that a Games Master faces. Even more so in MERP. It is something that is very hard to formalise. Basically, a Games Master, I keep saying Game Master, I'm going to keep saying Games Master, should award experience points for ideas and actions by the characters which are clever, intelligent, innovative, dangerous but not foolhardy, and above all, successful. So already, this is not like 1st edition AD&D, where you get XP for monsters slain, defeated, encountered, however the DM wants to give it out, plus the loot you find. You're getting XP for what you achieve. Now that idea was adapted for 2nd edition, but this came out 3 years before 2nd edition AD&D, so I don't know if other systems did this beforehand, but certainly this was ahead of the curve compared with D&D. Below we summarise some of the activities that normally arise during play, which should be rewarded with experience points. Rather annoyingly, this game refers to experience points as EP rather than XP. I've got EP as electron pieces in my head. The suggested experience points awards are guidelines, and the Games Master should feel free to modify them whenever common sense indicates that they are out of line. Totally agree with that, but it does take practice. The Games Master may total and reward experience points at any convenient time. This usually occurs at the beginning or end of a session of play. In MERP, I would suggest at the end of the session, because there is so much bookkeeping involved and little nuances that things need to be fresh in your mind. Here's an interesting note. Now, this is something I really like about MERP's experience point system. All of these totals may be multiplied by 4 if the activity has never been performed before by the character, by 2 if the activity has only been performed once before, and by a half if it has become routine. Yes, that does lead to some awkward bookkeeping. I like this idea in theory. In practice, it is an absolute pain in the backside to keep track of. Keeping a record of which characters have killed orcs before, and which ones have dealt with trolls, and which ones have climbed trees, and which ones have cast this spell, and which ones have whatever the maneuver might be, the action, the creature might be that gives the experience points. You'd have to keep a record in order to do that. But how I would adapt that is, if it feels like a new experience, you multiply by 4. If they're still quite green, maybe still only about 2nd level, I would multiply by 2, and that would help characters through those very, very tough lower levels. And then naturally the character progression would slow down around 2nd and 3rd level, which is a sort of style of progress that I like to see in a game. Okay, next bit. This is what we're going to go into now, are the various defined ways of getting experience points, or the suggestions that the book gives. Here's the first one: hit points. At the end of the battle, a character receives 1 experience point for each hit he received during the battle, providing they were not cured during the battle. I'd throw this out personally. It's just unnecessary bookkeeping, and when you need 10,000 to go up a level, whether you get 5 because something scratched you during a battle is insignificant. But I will come to my amendments towards the end of the video. That gives you an idea of the bookkeeping already. Okay, now we move on to the second paragraph about gaining experience points, and this is a section entitled Critical Points. Criticals are a big part of MERP combat. These points are awarded for any criticals inflicted on a foe regardless of their effect. I have put the table on screen here. The experience points awarded are based upon the level of the foe and are modified depending on the state of the foe and the combat. Table ET3 summarised these points. Now, what you can see on the table, on the left hand side is the opponent's level, and across the top the level of critical delivered. MERP criticals range from A through to E, with A being the most minor and E being the most severe. See the line about 12 rows down which says to self? That doesn't mean stabbing yourself, it means having been hit by a foe during combat and surviving a critical. Now, I really like that. I like that aspect, in that a character gains experience through coming through adversity and suffering and surviving that suffering and gaining strength through it. That's a really nice idea. But I would drop the rest of the table. Again, I'll come to that at the end of the video. But already you should be able to start to see just how fiddly this is becoming, especially if you're using the 4 times 2 times bonus for never having done something before. Because do you apply it here the first time a character has delivered an E critical to a 10th level foe? 4-time bonus. Do you go to that level of detail? I'd suggest not. The third one is kill points. These experience points are awarded for killing an active opponent or rendering him unconscious. This must occur in a combat situation, i.e. a true conflict, not a practice or staged fight. No harvesting XP. An active opponent is one that is not dead or unconscious. These points all go to the combatant who delivers the blow that knocks out or kills the opponent. The experience points awarded for killing a character, by character I guess they mean an opponent, any opponent, are given in table ET1. Again, I'm showing this now on screen. These experience points are reduced by the number of experience points given for criticals already inflicted on the opponent. See point 2 above, the one I've already been through. In some cases, the Games Master should add extra points for creatures with special abilities and powers. I agree with that. First things first, you can see why I want to bin the experience points for criticals delivered, because that then overcomplicates the awarding of XP for the final kill, because all those little sums, they do add up, and it goes way beyond AD&D 1E and 2E, and far beyond 5th edition. You can see now why I'm laughing at 5th edition DMs who think it's overly complicated to give out XP in 5e when you're dealing with nice big numbers such as 50 divided by 5. Right, I would also drop the idea of the only the person delivering the killing blow. Again, I will explain this towards the end of the video. Fourth means of getting XP is through maneuver points. Now, it's always bothered me that it's the American spelling of the word maneuver in here. Of course it is written and published in America, but Middle Earth is a British thing. So, these experience points are given for unique or inspired maneuvers, static or moving. There are two types of maneuver in MERP, static maneuvers, moving maneuvers. Static maneuvers are things like learning the properties of an item, perception, things like that. Moving maneuvers are as they sound: climbing, jumping, diving out of the way, swimming, that sort of thing. For moving maneuvers, tells you a section to go to. A 100 result or higher must be obtained. That's quite difficult to do, especially at low level. Based upon difficulty, the experience points awarded are given in table ET4. Again, I'm showing this table on screen. Like I said, this is 3 years before 2nd edition AD&D started giving out XP for characters doing class-related stuff. So this, it may well be a bit of an innovation. I don't know about other games having done this before or not, but I really like this. It's encouraging the characters to be their class, to do their thing, to be creative and inventive, and I would expand the XP from this section. Again, come to it towards the end of the video. Next one is spell points. These points are awarded for casting spells during a combat situation, both intrinsic spells and spells from runes and items. Casting a spell that fails results in 0 points. Yes, spells can fail. The spell must have a purpose that aids the character or his group during the combat. The experience points awarded are given by the following formula. It does write the formula there, but I'm going to show you the table instead. And you can see on the table that you have spell level and level of character casting the spell. And lower level spellcasters get more points because they are learning their trade. So, all simple so far, do you think? I don't. Next up we have idea points. Again, AD&D 2nd edition. Copied this 3 years later. These experience points are given for ideas and plans that lead to the accomplishment of a goal or a successful event. Yes, this is exactly what XP is all about. Successful event, action or adventure. So it encompasses all that stuff. The Games Master should keep track of ideas, plans and suggestions made by a player character or made by player characters that prove to be useful or successful. After an event, action or adventure is completed and experience points from paragraphs 1 to 5 above, as earlier, have been awarded, the resulting experience points to all group members are totalled. The Games Master should award half of this total as idea points, dividing it among the characters who came up with ideas based upon their respective contributions. This is very subjective, so the Games Master doesn't need to keep an exact tally of ideas and can usually rely on his general impressions of the adventure. The next section, travel points. A character receives 1 experience point for each mile travelled on land in an unfamiliar area, and 1 experience point for every 10 miles if flying or at sea. The character must be conscious and interacting with his environment. Multiply by 1/2 in civilized areas, but by 2 in moderately dangerous areas, and by 3 in extremely dangerous areas. The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, main source material for MERP, were all about the journey. I like this. Yes, again, it's a bit of fiddly bookkeeping, but it encourages exploration. And finally, miscellaneous points. Most of the experience point guidelines concern action in a tactical situation, i.e. a situation involving detailed and precise activity, usually under time constraints, such as fighting, manoeuvring and exploring. It is more difficult to award experience points for activities and accomplishments in a strategic environment, i.e. less structured than the tactical environment. Travel points reflect the experience gained by travelling through new and stimulating regions. The Game Master should award miscellaneous experience points for the other strategic activities not involving travel. For example, figuring out a riddle or a clue, planning a successful trip or adventure, etc. All highly subjective, but all absolutely fine. Now, the first thing I think you can take from all of this experience point system, other than it being fiddly, because yes, it is that experience points are handed out on an individual basis. There's no expectation that the characters will advance at the same rate. There's no expectation that the characters will be all the same level, at the same level of development. It's also rewarding the players for being creative and inventive, and I fully support that. That's something, it's a hill I will die on. Okay, now the changes I would make. Hit points. Experience points for taking damage. Get rid of it. Critical points. Get rid of it for causing criticals. Keep it for receiving criticals. And the kill XP I would share between all surviving members of the party. Maneuver points. Now, to counteract the loss of critical points, critical point XP, I would double this. It encourages players to interact with the environment and come up with inventive and exciting actions for their character to perform. Spell points I would keep, because from my experience of running the game, martial characters, those in the forefront of combat, gain XP faster than spellcasters, especially at low levels, due to the spellcasters having weak and low level and very few spells at their disposal. I know spellcasters are supposed to be rarer in the MERP world, but I still said to keep things even, I would keep spell points. Plus, a lot of the non-combatant characters have decent skills in static or moving maneuvers, and I'm going to give them that extra bonus from maneuver points. That's fine. And the fact that those in the front line of combat are, if they are more likely to be hit and thus suffer damage through criticals, they are still getting their extra XP there. So I think this will even things out and it'll be simpler. Idea points is a definite. Yes, has to be in there. Make the players pay attention. Make the players be constructive. It encourages them to be involved. Travel points, I wouldn't do it by the mile. That's just too finicky. What I would do is I would say, for example, travelling on the road from the Shire to Bree. If the characters have never done that before, I'd give them 100 XP. It's a relatively safe journey. If they're then going from Bree to Weathertop, probably the same. If they're then though going from Weathertop out towards the bridge and then through the Troll Shores, I would give them probably 300 for that. It's a much riskier undertaking. That's of course in addition to any XP they might earn along the way through encountering things in the Troll Shores. Trolls. So already you can see I have, if I was to run this again, and I'm fully intending to, I would really simplify it, but I'm sticking to the expectation of the system. It's still probably a little more complicated than AD&D. It's certainly much more complicated than 5th edition, but it's more bearable than how MERP originally portrayed it, because that made it into sorcery and spreadsheets. That's the only way I could describe it, really. So there you go. That's my breakdown of the MERP system, and that's me using the benefit of my experience of running it and my aging years to give a rundown of how I would improve it in my eyes. You might not agree with me, but I firmly believe these systems are for us to tweak when you've got the level of experience behind you to do so and know what you are trying to achieve, but are willing to stay within the feel that the system is trying to portray. And remember that passage at the start? The suggested experience point awards are guidelines, and the Games Master should feel free to modify them whenever common sense indicates they are out of line. I totally agree with that. I know I'm repeating myself. So I'm going to go now, and I hope you've enjoyed the video. Click like, subscribe, give me a comment. If there's anything you don't understand about what I've gone through here, check out my other MERP videos. I will be doing one on combat and one on the way they do moving maneuvers and the various tables, and I have already done one on character creation, which gives you an idea of the skills that characters do tend to have in the game. So please check those out, and I'll see you again soon. Bloody ice cream van, go away! Can I see a man's at work here? Nah, get off my video!